trying to adopt a place-based approach to tackle physical activity inequalities. So we've seen by working with places across England that there are these three broad approaches that you can see across the screen. So one is around integrating physical activity into other sectors. So, for example, working with health or education or crime and justice. And that middle kind of column is really about working at the heart of communities, strengthening those capacities in place. Sometimes it's called an asset-based approach, sometimes a strength-based approach, and the other is really recognising that inequalities in physical activity are inextricably linked to inequalities that people are experiencing in their actual lives. So whilst we don't normally have the opportunity to tackle those root causes, for example, access to sort of jobs, employment, actually, when you take a place-based approach and you bring in sort of individuals, key stakeholders and allies from other fields in your area, it becomes possible to start to sort of tackle some of those wicked problems. So it's difficult, but it's possible and important. And you can see on here that a lot of you will be familiar with that across these three approaches, we've got 10 cross-cutting conditions. I'm not going to go into depth, but the conditions are what we've been covering in these learning seminars. And there's lots of detail.
Obviously, when I went through, we had a few examples.
Oh, sorry, a bit of background noise. We've got a lot of detail on each of these conditions, and that's what's being developed and can be accessed through our website. And I think Emma will be able to post a link into the chat about that, so you can kind of keep returning to it as we update it. So before we go deeper into introducing this condition, we're going to go into breakout rooms for 5 minutes, I think, to make introductions in advance of the later breakout group discussions. So please do introduce yourselves, say what you're hoping to get out of today's session. And yeah, I just want to say thanks again to everybody for turning up. So is that all right, Emma? I think Emma's going to put you into the breakout rooms. You will eventually end up in them, and there'll be a little timer, and then we'll join back in here. Thank you.
I'm just opening them, so you should receive an invitation to enter.
Can you see my screen, Emma? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So hopefully everybody has introduced themselves. Brilliant. Okay. So today, thank you again, everyone, for coming. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from Exeter and Doncaster. We'll be introducing these two separate places in a minute, and they're going to talk about their experiences and delve a bit deeper into what they've been up to. Just wanted to remind everybody that for those of you who've been coming regularly, you'll be familiar with the Essence document. It's that one-page document that we produce, which just sort of is to introduce what we mean by these conditions. Today, obviously focusing on physical environments that enable wellbeing and physical activity, but you can access that on the website, and that might be useful. So I'm just going to go into a little bit more depth of this condition. So kind of what does this mean and why? So creating physical environments that promote physical activity and well-being requires really good kind of design and effective management of the built and the natural surroundings. So we were just discussing that really briefly in our breakout room about the fact that the individual characteristics of a place can play into this quite a lot, which is obviously very fitting with a place-based approach. So improving access to natural environments and creating public spaces that are equitable, safe and valued by all communities is really crucial in this. And community involvement in planning and design can foster local ownership and increase the usage. So more people will be comfortable, perhaps, for example, walking along a pavement that is street lit and is wider and there is space. A place-based approach which focuses on those sort of physical and geographical characteristics or attributes of a place can be central to understanding how very best that context and that environment can be improved to enable well-being physical activity, or the ways in which we work with the built environment, the natural environment, can enable physical activity. So I do appreciate that this condition it's going to be a really interesting one, because it is quite different to the other conditions that are, when we're talking about ways of working, and this does involve the actual, the physical and built environment. So I think that's quite interesting. When we talk about sector integration, it's important to recognise the built environment's role in promoting physical activity across sectors. So such as the public health team and the transport team, having that sort of joined up approach, pooling resources and talking more. This is perhaps really important for sort of tackling those inequalities. And, if we can design those local amenities and travel options that are designed to encourage, walking, cycling, scooting, informal interactions, that collaborative planning amongst stakeholders is really essential. So pooling of resources and working towards achieving shared goals. When we talk a bit more about sort of the community and strengthening individual capacity, strategies that improve like the safe access and equitable access to open spaces is really important. So I think it's definitely about, we'll hopefully hear from examples in this, about bringing sort of local cultural and practical needs from the community to make sure that amenities are valuable and they're valued by communities. So we need to sort of it's crucial that community voices, especially from disadvantaged groups, are involved in the co-design of these spaces, and they can reflect local attributes. I think I just also want to mention that it's important to always consider how we must tackle structural inequalities in terms of this. So that's always really challenging with the conditions. Structural disadvantage is evident in neglected environments. So, often abandoned land, derelict buildings or misused facilities that might make that area feel quite unsafe. So I think addressing this requires regulatory processes. We've got to hold policymakers to account for the public health implications of planning or infrastructure and those changes to the environment. So experiences from place partnerships reveal that 4 factors for creating physical activity, physical environments that enable well-being and physical activity kind of exist. And we can look at these in a bit more depth now. So that first point there is around building pride and ownership of physical environments that reflect the community knowledge. So, as I said, sort of involving communities, VCSE organisations, and trying to appreciate that there is quite often a traditional culture of competitiveness sometimes between these organisations. So it's trying to remove that and get, key groups to work together towards a shared goal rather than kind of competing. And if we truly sort of if we truly involve communities in this and in shaping their physical and built environment, the actual environments will reflect community knowledge and pride. So second is having an appreciation for the specific local context, and that's relevant to maximise opportunities in local spaces with less reliance on resource allocation. So that again is around, there isn't always going to be loads of funding. It's expensive to build shiny new things. It's expensive to build brand new cycle lanes, and often it's really difficult to make that happen. So this is about, using the built environment that is existing and how best we can make the most of the local characteristics that are already there with the resource that has been allocated. So third, I want to talk about future strategic planning for infrastructure and transport, and that involves a range of key stakeholders and multidisciplinary teams. So this should be informed by evidence on best practice for health and wellbeing promoting places. So I talked briefly about the sort of key stakeholders and sectors integrating and talking to one another. So if we can have conversations between a transport team and a health team, a public health team, about sort of directions that we want to go in, future planning, policies, then, you know, having that sector integration and having different groups sort of pool their resources and talk together can increase the sort of the positive outcomes and help us to be sort of much more embedded in terms of our physical environments that enable well-being and physical activity opportunities. Finally, establishing regulatory processes or policy between health and spatial planning departments. So where the physical environment is highlighted as a key component of the wider determinants of health, that will help to achieve this systemic change. So these changes are really hard, but when public health implications are actually considered at the heart of new infrastructure plans, the outcomes can be highly impactful over a long term. So I think that's about these, when we say regulatory processes and policy, that's about making it, you know, actually going in at the structure and thinking about those sort of facilitating governance and sort of linking maybe even to that condition about how do we think about our regulatory processes. You know, are we considering the physical environment? You know, is this taking precedent as being a key determinant, a key wider determinant of health? So before I move on and hand over to Exeter, I want to give you a quick sort of opportunity now. We've got some time to open this up to the floor for any questions, or we can post things in the chat, and I'm happy to go back to slides if necessary. But I think it would be just quite nice to hear from anyone if anyone has any immediate comments about this. And obviously there's no pressure, but if not, we can move forwards. But I think that if anyone just wants to kind of comment on this condition or what they're doing in their place, give a couple of minutes for that. Yeah, John, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. I think the thing that is the most challenging, it'll be interesting to see with the case studies, is how, you know, how do we get our influence with the planners or with highways departments or with transport people or district councils, etc. Because that is the biggest challenge, never mind the developers that we sometimes work with as well in terms of that. Having the lever of resource and being able to influence where the money comes from and how the money's shaped is helpful. But unless you've got planning policy that's really tight and stuff like that, it's having those levers be really good. If both examples are able to talk about a little bit about that as well, that'd be really helpful.
I don't know whether I don't want to pass this on, but I don't know whether anybody that anyone from Exeter or Doncaster, if James or Andy wanted to comment on that. James, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm happy to come in. Hi, John. How's it going? James from Exeter and Cranbrook here. Yeah, I'll pick up on that in my presentation actually, around how we're kind of embedding some resource through our place-based work, kind of across tier 1 and tier 2 authorities, and almost like an interface between the city planning department at district council level and the transport planning department at county level, and it's that kind of shared capacity and that bridge across the two organisations that's helping us both at a detailed operational level but influencing the ask of kind of policy and investment to make things happen. So obviously I won't be able to go into too much detail, but more than happy to pick it up offline, and maybe we can share some of our kind of insight at a later date.
Thanks, James.
Thanks for that, James. I can see we've got a question in the chat as well, which is, sorry, I'm just kind of catching up on it and reading. So, you know, how do we get influence with, it's not a question actually, it's just a comment maybe, about getting influence with the planners, and that sort of links into what you were saying maybe, John, as well. Does anyone else want to kind of comment on that? Or something different around this point?
I can come in from a Doncaster perspective if you want on that.
Yeah, that would be great,
Yeah,
please,
okay.
Andrew.
Hi, I'm Andy Madder, strategic lead at Doncaster. The The embedding the planners and policy one's an interesting one, John. We worked quite hard on that over the 7 years, a bit like James in Exeter, and we've shared our learning between the two of us. It takes time, and it's really finding those resources that you can embed into by capital. So we've been lucky in doing that, particularly in our active travel arena, and that's brought sort of recognition in other areas. So we are now working with our planners around 106 funding and how we can actually lever that into better decision making around physical activity, and I'll touch it on one of my slides around policy design. So we're working with planners now around policy design, particularly around green space audit, which I'll mention. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Simon, did you want to come in with a question?
It was just a reflection really on that. I suppose it is, I think, partly about links to some of the other conditions, isn't it? That question of how we sort of influence planners and so on, and build those strategic connections and influence, which obviously links back to the leadership condition as well, which we talked about as one of those 10 conditions. And in my own experience, I used to work in Stockport Council. There we had an embedded public health person in planning for a long time, who was able to review planning applications and put the processes in place, I suppose, to make it a routine part of planning applications, to actually consider the public health implications of that. So that links a little bit to processes and governance as well, doesn't it?
Definitely.
So,
I think there's a massive link with that, and that those feedback loops of it in between all the conditions are all sort of fed into one another. I think that's a really good point. John, did you want to?
Yeah, just from those three contributions, what really is starkly obvious to me certainly is that the capacity and capability of our workforce to embrace this piece of work is very, very specialist. And you try and get hold of an urban designer to help you out with sort of making a case or an advocacy. They're very few and far between, aren't they? Do you mean? And that's where the power of this network to bring together this expertise is really, really beneficial in terms of helping us fast track some of that, because as a formerly trained PE teacher and now a sports development officer for more years than I care to remember, then the planning laws is well beyond my grasp. So I hold my hands up on that one. So yeah, I think it's definitely an indication of the specialist knowledge to really make a difference at some of that macro level. So yeah, while we might be willing and enthusiastic, we need to have that expertise around it as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's really important. And that might be sort of something that will get covered a little bit in the presentations coming up. I'm going to, if that's kind of all right, I'm going to sort of, oh, go on, Stuart. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just to contribute really, I think two partnerships, Manchester and South Tees Local Delivery Pilot, have used an organisation called Public Practice to get urban designers as internships for a year or 2 years. So that's brought in someone with specific expertise who wants to transfer from another sector into, potentially physical activity and planning, etc. And I think those two posts have been extremely valuable. And we're looking at something around green infrastructure, because most of our communities who are inactive live in older, more deprived communities where the planning system doesn't have an impact. So it's trying to think how you use the green infrastructure to retrofit those communities. And I think that's probably the real focus around place-based work as well.
Yeah, definitely. And as yeah, just as you said, I think that's such a big thing, isn't it? It's recognizing the assets in a place and trying to best utilize them, and really take that place-based approach. Thank you very much for that, Stuart. So I'm going to move us on and hand us over now to Exeter. If you are ready to go, James, I think you'll be able to share your screen.
Thanks, Harriet. Yeah, we're ready to go.
All right, thank you.
Oh my God.
I'm hoping that everybody can see those slides. So
Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. My name's James Bogue. I'm the program lead for the Exeter and Cranbrook local delivery pilot place-based working. Our program's called Live and Move. I'm also the service lead at Exeter City Council for communities, health and wellbeing and physical activity. have spent the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years on our place-based and systemic approach, and hopefully some of what I'm going to go through today kind of talks to some of the questions and points that have already been raised. It, in kind of wider terms, with the approach around the 10 conditions, as a team over the last 6 to 9 months, we've been kind of grasping hold of the system maturity matrix and index and the concept tree developed by NELP and Sport England evaluation team to really kind of reflect and understand kind of the examples that are helping us on our journey of systemic change. And through this condition, I'm just going to go through a range of some of the examples that are contributing towards our work in the physical environment space. So specifically going to be talking about physical environments today, but I'm also happy to speak to any places that are embarking on their journey around this work and starting to use the system maturity matrix and how we've kind of adopted that as a team and through wider stakeholders locally to have those conversations and focus specifically at specific conditions. So it's an offer from me really to support any places that are kind of embarking on that work. This presentation is a bit of a high level summary of the work we're doing around physical environments. It's impossible to go into too much detail in 10 minutes, but hopefully the sort of 4 or 5 areas I'm going to discuss today might create some light bulbs for people. And once again, I'm more than happy to pick up any individual conversations via email and calls. And even if people want to come down and have a look at the work in practice that we're doing in Exeter and Cranbrook, you'd be more than welcome to come down and explore that. I'll just go through some slides now, but I do have some other colleagues that are in the room, so to speak, today, and will be in the other breakout room. So if you've got any questions, please fire them at those colleagues, and we'll do our best to either respond in the room or at a later date. So taking the opportunity just to go through our approach to physical environments through the conditions. So starting off with kind of sector integration. We've reflected that we're kind of establishing in our practice here, which is mainly talking to Simon's point really around kind of leadership and advocacy. We have a 20-year housing vision in Exeter around the city being a healthy and active and inclusive place to live. And underneath that city vision that's bought into by a wide number of kind of system leaders and partners across the city, we have a corporate plan. And our work through Live and Move has been around influencing those kind of plans and policies across the place. What the two of the key 3 priorities within the city: one is to be a healthy and active city, and the other is to build great neighbourhoods. So the work that we do is very much focused on achieving those corporate priorities for the city, and we've done a lot of work with our senior leadership, our politicians, and our partners through the Exeter Livable Place Board to bring those priorities right up to the top of our city strategy. Over the last few years, I've been working really closely with our planning team and our director of city development to support them with the development of their housing plan and also their local plan, and supporting our planning team to engage in a different way with communities and residents as we go through the formal local plan development process. Underneath that is our Livable Exeter housing plan, which seeks to build 20,000 new homes in and around Exeter over the next 20 years, and how we've worked alongside Sport England to embed active design principles both into the wider plan, but now actually as we move into the establishing those first new housing developments on brownfield sites, actually practically starting to embed those active design principles into things like design code and supplementary planning documents through specific developments within the city. Our strategy is around brownfield development, so it gives us huge opportunity to look at a bit more of a blank canvas in terms of developing neighbourhoods with those principles, things like walkable communities, identifying community champions, active streets. That's all built into our approach and our strategy. Specifically, in order to achieve that, and it was in response a little bit to kind of John's point around the capacity building, we're in a 2-tier authority structure here in Devon. So Devon County Council as the Transport Planning Authority, and ourselves at Exeter are the City Planning Authority. That brings its own challenges. So we identified at quite an early stage 4 or 5 years ago to put some joint capacity together for a post that kind of acts as the interface between those two planning departments, with a view absolutely about developing our approach to active travel, active design, and generating those conversations between planning departments to help us kind of deliver our programs of work. The last bullet point there is a ward within the city, Newtown. We're working together in partnership with Devon to deliver a scheme of public realm enhancements to make the area safer for walking and cycling into the city centre. And I've got lots of detail behind that scheme, which I can send widely for those that might be interested in that. In terms of the strengthening communities element of this particular condition, we have a asset-based community development and social prescribing program in Exeter called Wellbeing Exeter, and it is through that we do a lot of our engagement, conversations, focus groups, and listening exercises with local communities. We have a community builder in most wards of the city who are regularly having those conversations, and it's through that we've started to establish a new system in the city of small active travel infrastructure improvements. We're working alongside our local cycling campaign, the Exeter Cycling Campaign, who are feeding in a range of small but impactful things that we could do to make changes to highways and public realm to improve walking and cycling infrastructure. Simple things like drop curbs, access points, removing bollards, cycle storage, ways that we can make small changes to paths, pavements, exits, access ways to improve walking and accessibility. That new system is developing at pace. We're trialing it across the city at the moment in our priority areas, and I'm sure many of you will know the kind of system in your local authority areas for reporting potholes. We're moving to a place where we'll have the ability to do the same thing for ideas, concepts, and contributions from communities and residents to suggest small ways that we can improve walking and cycling infrastructure. And it's the capacity that we've put in partnership between Devon and Exeter that's kind of delivering and developing that scheme alongside really keen advocates for walking and cycling through the Exeter Cycling Campaign. In terms of green infrastructure, which was raised earlier, we're really fortunate that around about 20 years ago we established the Exeter Green Circle. It's a 12.5-mile circular loop around the city that weaves in and out of many green spaces, but also a number of our deprived wards in the city. We've built a really rich platform of data through our digital platform, Go Jauntily, which enables residents to be able to identify where those walks are that are connected to the Green Circle, but also provide feedback on things like access, signage, which gives us a really good feedback loop of being able to make live changes to the route. We also do an annual survey, which I think was picked up earlier. So we survey our residents to ask them a range of questions about how they engage with the Green Circle and how it can be improved in the future. This is a good example where it kind of blends across a number of the different system conditions, because through the work and the visibility of the Green Circle across the city, it's enabled us to influence conversations and investment around larger infrastructure projects that are within walking distance of the route. And through the evidence base that we've got, we're able to make the case for securing SIL and Section 106 investments to both deliver improvements on the route, but also those wider kind of walking and cycling infrastructure improvements that will enable people from our communities to access the Green Circle. Here's a map of the city. The green dotted line represents the Exeter Green Circle, and the numbered areas are the wards in the city that have the highest levels of inactivity and the poorest health outcomes. So we're very clearly and visibly able to connect those communities to the Green Circle. And there's a number of kind of activities and interventions that we support through Wellbeing Exeter within those wards to enable people to access the Green Circle. It was designed strategically to enable it to go in a circular route around the city, but also weave in and out of those communities that have the densest populations within the city. Finally, I think it's fair to say that tackling structural inequalities through physical activity is really complex work. And we have a specific example within Exeter working with our communities and residents within our most deprived ward within the city, which is Wamford, to transform the existing leisure and community facility in that area. It's fair to say it's not fit for purpose and is actually a barrier to being active rather than opening, welcoming building, providing physical activity opportunities. The picture that you can see there is a network of organisations called Inclusive Exeter, which brings together a lot of culturally diverse communities within the city. And we're working with Inclusive Exeter to help design that future new facility, which will bring leisure, community and youth facilities all under one roof through a single community hub. And we're exploring lots of different management options and arrangements with Inclusive Extra as one local network, but also through a sounding board that we've created alongside local residents and trustees of the current building who are helping us design that building alongside Sport England technical colleagues from an active design perspective, and we're hoping to bring that capital project forward within the next couple of years. What's really great is it's also actually based on the Green Circle, so it's providing us with an access point and I guess a start and finish for people that want to walk or cycle the route, and we're hosting that within our most deprived ward within the city, which we're really proud of. Appreciate that's a kind of a real whistle-stop tour of the work that we are doing in the city around physical environments, but hopefully you can see how that's kind of complementary to the approach that we're taking around the system maturity matrix and all of the conditions within the city. Our local delivery pilot area also includes the new town, which was a healthy new town called Cranbrook, which is a couple of miles outside the city. We've got a lot of learning and insight around the kind of planning and implementation of infrastructure within a new town, which has had a huge impact on physical activity levels within that particular new place, which was green fields within Devon 10 years ago and is accelerating at a rapid rate with up to 10,000 residents already living there with fairly minimal access to community and physical activity opportunities. So I'm more than happy to pick that up as a separate thread with anyone that's working with either healthy new towns or new developments that are cropping up in your local area. Hopefully that's been a kind of a useful overview of the work in Exeter and Cranbrook. As I say, more than happy to pick up with colleagues that have got specific questions through the session today or at a later date. I'll drop my email in the chat. And yeah, look forward to speaking with you later. Thanks, Harriet.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. That was so interesting. I know that I've got a question or two, but I don't want to jump in if other people want to. We've got a bit of time now. If people want to actually ask James some questions about everything just spoke about, which was really, really interesting. And what you're doing in Exeter sounds great. Just give everyone a moment if people want to either put their questions in the chat or come up. Stuart, do you want to go for it first? Oh, you're on mute.
There you go. Really interested. You mentioned about having a positive impact on physical activity levels. I'm just wondering how that's being measured and how in that new town, but then specifically in Exeter, how are you kind of measuring the outcomes from the work?
Great question, and I could do another presentation on this as well. We've got a evaluation partner which we've had alongside our place-based work over the last 5 to 6 years. They're attached to the University of Plymouth, and they deliver an evaluation framework around all our work, which tracks our progress against our theory of change. But I guess different to many places, we deliver an annual local active lives survey, which is using the questions from the Sport England National Survey, but taking a bespoke local approach. On the map that I showed you, there were sort of 12 areas that have got the highest levels of inactivity and the poorest health outcomes within the city. We do an enhanced local active lives survey in those areas. So we survey 2,000 residents across those 12 areas on an annual basis, and we've been doing that for the last 5 years. So we've got a year-on-year analysis of physical activity levels in our areas of greatest need, which we're then able to benchmark against the kind of city as a whole, and regionally and nationally. And it's throwing up some really interesting kind of insights and points of inquiry to kind of further delve into in those specific places. And it's fascinating to see the trends of physical activity levels for those areas, against the kind of city as a whole, because actually Exeter is quite an affluent middle class area, but we've got pockets of real deprivation, and the inequalities across the city are some of the widest in the country, from the most affluent areas to the most deprived. So quite stark data around you're 3 times more likely to be inactive in those areas than if you're within the mainstream population. So yeah, we've got quite a robust and detailed methodology around our local active lives survey. I'm more than happy to kind of share further detail alongside our evaluation partner if anybody's interested in our approach around kind of impact analysis.
Thank you for that, James. Just checking some questions in the chat. John, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Unlike Stuart, my question's a bit less sophisticated, James, so apologies about that. Stuart's come a very elegant question. Stuart, James, sorry, how much capacity have you guys got to champion this agenda? Is it more than just you? Is it you and a team of people? Just give me a flavour of that, because we're struggling to unlock the capacity that we think is required to do this, to do that particular job in the way that you've described it. I know it's been a 20-year journey, and that's fantastic, but what's your current capacity? Give me a flavour of it. I did warn you, it wasn't a very sophisticated question, sorry.
No, yeah, it's a good question. We've got a smallish, I guess, core team of around 8 people. We've got our evaluation team. We're also, our approach is to kind of work with other organisations to look at where we can kind of share resources. An example of that is the partnership with Devon County Council on our Active Travel Environments programme lead. What we've also worked very hard at is bringing other colleagues that are resourced elsewhere into the conversation. So, for example, our kind of assistant service lead for city development, that's leading on the Exeter local plan, is really connected to our work, regular conversations, and as a result, he's able to kind of articulate our approach to his wider planning team, and they've got actually influenced their decision to build some capacity in their team around urban design. So we've got an expert in our planning team at the city council that's not resourced through this work. It's a planning function, and they are our expert and our eyes and ears on the ground around kind of auditing planning applications around active travel, active design, and yeah, that's so it's been a lot of hard work getting to that place, but I guess the fact that it's a city priority, we've got that influence at a leadership and political level, enables kind of operational guys to point resources in a similar space. So smallish core team, but the colleagues that are resourced in other organisations that are helping to complement the work probably adds up to quite a significant amount of kind of matched resource into the physical activity system bit.
Thank you, James. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat because we've got other people coming up. I think that was a really comprehensive answer to John's question. Did anyone else have any sort of direct questions for James about the work in Exeter? We've got some stuff going on in the chat, which is really good, and people are putting some useful links as well.
Jen has asked a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to speak to that. Just about the active live survey.
Yeah, sorry, just I've got really bad background noise here, so put it in the chat and stuff. But yeah, the active lives enhanced kind of survey, was that adult CYP or was that both?
So the enhanced work that we do in our deprived areas is just adults. There's a range of reasons why it's really complicated to use the methodology that we're using for children and young people, given the fact that it's field work, door knocking, survey completion. we do work with Active Devon around the CYP analysis of active lives, but it's nowhere near as detailed and robust as the adult active life survey that we enhance in those areas. But yeah, we have the kind of overview level of data, but the methodology is very much focused at adults.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks so much for that, James. Thanks, Jem, for your question. I think if we haven't got any more sort of direct questions for James about Exeter, I mean, feel free. I think, as James made really clear, is happy to be contacted. If you want to just put stuff in the chat, you know, going forwards, if something kind of comes up and you think about it, don't hesitate. I'm just looking to. Thanks for that, James. That's really helpful. I'm just looking to Emma now, but I think we're going to have a bit of a break. So we're going to take. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we're going to take 10 minutes. Yeah, thanks for that, James. I'm coming down to Exeter on Thursday, so looking forward to that. But yeah, if we're going to take a 10-minute break, please feel free to turn off your microphones, cameras, everything, and we'll return at 11:34. Okay. All right. Cheers. People back now. So Andrew, you're going to be sharing the slides, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay, no worries. Thanks, Emma. Cheers. Thank you for coming. Hope everybody had a nice little 10 minutes. Was able to just stand up, stretch your legs, maybe get a brew. Going to move back on, I think. I think we'll carry on now. Is that all right, Emma? You reckon? Go for it? Yeah, getting the nod. Okay. So we've obviously heard from James at Exeter, and now we're going to hear from another place, so Doncaster, and Andy's going to take us through about a presentation about what Doncaster have been up to. So Andy, if you want to go for it, welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Andy Maddox. I'm the Service and Strategic Lead for Leisure Services at the City of Doncaster Council, and have overall responsibility for delivery of our physical activity work and strategy, which is called Get Doncaster Moving. And I've got my colleague on the call today, Jodie Bridger, who's heavily involved in this piece of work and has been with me for the past 6-7 years now, actually. So I'm just going to share my screen and talk through where we are. Okay. Okay, can just somebody say they can see those slides for me, because I can't see anybody now.
Yeah, I can see them.
Okay, right, thank you. So, as I said, we're a City of Doncaster Council. Get Doncaster Moving is our approach to increasing levels of physical activity, but more importantly, actually trying to reduce those stubborn inequalities that we see across our city and our borough. So physical activity is really front and centre at that core. A bit like James mentioned in his presentation, we are working across a wide spectrum of the built environment. We heavily lean into active travel and also build and planning, but where we're going to focus the presentation today is very much on our green space and infrastructure programme that we call Doncaster Future Parks. And that's looking at our system across the city and wider, and also how we want to reimagine our open spaces in the future. For those that don't know, Doncaster, we're the largest metropolitan borough in England. We've got a population of about 310,000, and within that we've got multiple green spaces and lots of green space between what we are really a borough of communities with a core city centre. So it's quite an interesting place to work this in, because we've got a very diverse range of park spaces and green spaces to work in. So Doncaster Future Parks. The four themes that we've been asked to speak on here, building pride and community ownership, is one of our key themes. Everything we deliver across Get Doncaster Moving is in partnership and led by our communities. So that is very much at the heart of our work, led by communities, and we work with them to support them to develop their spaces and their environments. Where we are in this is one of our examples, a specific example of work within Hexthorpe, which is one of our most targeted communities we're working in, and it has a lot of issues within that community around high levels of deprivation of both standards of living, education, a very mixed community with demographics, and also culturally as well. So pétanque or French bowls within that community is probably not the first sport or physical activity you go to for delivery. However, as it says here on the slide, we were approached by 3 community members asking through the mayor, a letter to the mayor, they want a French bowls court. What we didn't do is immediately go, oh, well, we're just going to build that. We've spent some time with that group understanding, and normally our response there is different to this. Is when we get small groups coming together, is we find there's not really the traction to build an organisation. However, in this case, we did. Those 3 individuals were very strong in what they wanted to do. They worked with us. They were very inclusive, and we developed a very strong relationship with them. But more important, they developed a relationship with the community from day one, and a want to bring the community into their physical activity or sport. What we developed with them is the opportunity within the park to build a pétanque court. Which is the first one in Doncaster and the first one in South Yorkshire at the time, and that developed at the same time alongside working with the wider community to grow the people who wish to take part in that part of that sport. The benefits of it really is it is a technical sport, but it's not that technical to start off with. You don't need great physical literacy to actually take part. It's both the sport that can accommodate young people, elderly people, and people of different mobility needs at the same time. So we developed with them the idea around this, and then we invested a small amount of money in actually building the pétanque court. It actually cost us £3,000 to build, and that was through budgets we've got within our place partnership working. As it says on the slide here, that grew fairly quickly, and this is in the space of around 4 to 5 months, from 3 people to 45 people being engaged in that physical activity. However, it's not just about that court and that group. What it has done for the park, and it is key to utilising your green spaces, it has meant that there is vibrancy in the park. It shows that there is growth in the park, there's growth in that green space, and that has led to a more wider physical activity provision being developed there with tennis, with the LTA, but also with the Friends of Group developing their programs of activity around just green space gardening, planting, looking after that site, and then other interventions around the infrastructure that we've developed just to make the park more engaging. Not a significant amount of investment in the park, but things like solar lighting, opening sight lines up, improving the seating in the park, and working with other groups to do that. Okay, so appreciation of the local context is key to this work, and as we're focusing on our parks, we've got 15 parks we're looking at with a capital budget attached to that. That was about £3.5 million, which sounds a lot, but when you bring that across 15 parks, it actually averages out quite around about £150,000 on the park. Some get slightly more, some get slightly less, but we're working across that. One of those ones where we looked at our specific local context was Campsall Country Park. Now, this is a park that sits between 2 communities, and it bridges those communities. One is fairly affluent, small community, while the other side is a ex-pit village, and had a coking plant as well, which closed quite a while ago in that area. The area does have low unemployment, but one of the key things it has in that area is an aging population as well. So there is the growth in older people is significant compared to actually retaining younger people in the community. So that's something that's quite relevant there. Now on the site, and this was a specific development, we had a country park entrance and we had a leisure centre, Asken Leisure Centre. Asken Leisure Centre, we believe, was the last coal-fired leisure centre in England and possibly the UK. And adjacent to that, we have this lovely country park. Both of those had separate entrances, so they were viewed separately by the community. At the time we were looking at this, we were looking at investing into the leisure centre and actually refurbishing that building, while at the same time we had future parks money to invest into the park. What we were able to do was actually construct an environment that is in an active environment, bringing the two together. And through a basket of funding, some of that was Salix funding from the government around green energy. Some of that was around parks funding that we had, Sport England funding around active environments, and our own capital funding from the council. We were able to actually put a package together of roughly £7 million. So in essence, what we did was completely revisit the context, the local context of these two sites, the park and the leisure centre, from an evidence base and also what is the local need. So the key thing was we needed to bring them together so they're a cohesive unit. And we're able to do that very simply by closing the entrance to the leisure centre. As you drove in by the car into the car park, we just simply closed that entrance. So it sounds simple. It's quite hard to do. Now everybody has to access the leisure centre via the country park entrance, which was only 60 metres away. To do that, we've built a connecting road and revisited the car park for the country park, putting in CCTV, lighting, footpaths, etc., and opened up the whole environment. So it actually feels now, when you drive in, it is one facility. What we segued into the leisure centre was the leisure centre is a two-tier centre. So the ground floor, which was mainly storage, is now the parks building. So we have a cafeteria there for the parks. We have cycle storage. We have cycle events that run into the park with hire bikes, and we've also set up other functions around community groups being able to use the space in the lower ground floor. And then the upper part of the building, which would be a more traditional leisure facility, has been adapted. So two large changing rooms have been adapted with one multi-change room, and the second one is now a wellbeing studio, which uses Enerva equipment in there. And essentially what that does is it's power assisted gym equipment. Because the population is over the age of 50 predominantly, we put equipment in there that is relevant to aiding their health and well-being through work we've done with the community and with health professionals. That gym previously had a membership of about 40. Very poor equipment. We've got 12 items of this Enerva equipment in there. Our maximum target possible is 370 gym members. We opened in September and we've now reached 335 members as of last month. So we're getting pretty close to capacity on that. However, what it's also done is brought new usage. So we get people who use the country park who will pop into the leisure centre. And likewise, if people come into the leisure centre, let's say for their children in the summer for swimming lessons, they now will spend time in the park, visiting the park as well. So we've connected those two environments together. And that's taking all that local context into hand. Okay, how do we engage our communities and how do we engage our local community in the decision making has been key for us across our whole programme. What we do is use a range of approaches, because what we find is each community will work with us in a slightly different way. And that is key to your learning in this programme. What we will use is different methods of engagement. One of the things that we have found that has been quite good at breaking down barriers is the use of Facebook postcard drops and young people advisors, and that has enabled us to develop communication strands and also tease out learning from our communities, which has been very rich, very deep, but has helped us actually ensure that the work that we are helping them with actually meets the goals that they're looking for. It also enables us to understand the barriers and what we need to do with our parks and open spaces. And one of the key things, as it says on the slide here, is that the key barrier is feeling safe in our parks, or they feel uncomfortable when they're in our parks. And what we need to do is enable those green spaces to be those warm, welcoming spaces. Very simply, some of these actions can be undertaken by just opening sightlines up, making sure that areas of undergrowth are taken out and the way that we maintain them. But we've also worked with specific groups around how they feel safe or unsafe in these parks. And one of those was a project which was around young people. Now, what we did was we teamed up with Doncaster College and the young people at the college, and we worked through a process with them where they eventually designed and we've implemented an area for them in the park. Some of the learning points are very simple out of this. One of the things is that young people, we tend to do with young people in parks, particularly with teenage shelters, is put them in the corner of the park. The feedback and the evidence has told us that is that they don't want that. They want to be in an area where they are seen. They feel safe then because other people are seeing them and not hidden away. And why should we hide young people away is one of the key questions as well. The other thing around this is that they want to use these safe places for engagement between themselves, communication, talking, but they also at the same time want that to be in a way that is secluded in the sense of within the arrangement that you build, that they can have those private chats. Now, one of the things that we've noticed and what we found out is that what the young people called it was the wet bum scenario. When we place benches or seats in parks, we tend to base them in a linear way, so next to each other. But when you talk in a group of 3 or 4, you want to face each other. So as you can see in the center picture here, all we've done with those stone blocks is reorientate them. So actually a group can sit and talk facing themselves rather than one person having maybe to stand or sit on the ground, because their complaint was that somebody always comes back with a damp backside because they've had to sit on the grass. So we've listened and made those improvements, but those little things make big differences in the community. And that could only be found out by us is by that engagement with those specific groups and actually working with them over time. That's one of the things we need to really stress here. These are not quick fixes. These take time, and these actually need to be worked at the pace of those groups, which I'm sure you're aware of in your communities. What we've actually done off the back of that then is worked with other groups across other parks, and we've been able to build a schedule of works led by the engagement that actually delivers what seem to be very small improvements but make big differences in the park. Solar lighting, for instance, in pathways. We do that in a number of our parks now, and that's sort of been rolled out across the board. It's just discs that are put into the tarmac paths, and that gives a sense of safety on an evening at dusk because you can see your end goal where you're walking to, and that has actually seen increased numbers using our parks at that twilight period, particularly during the autumn months. An aligned shared purpose. What we do have in Doncaster is and we're grappling with is a system that is very silo based when it comes to our parks and open spaces. We have 5 directorates that manage individual parts of managing our green spaces. You can imagine trying to get those to work together is quite difficult. So one of the starting points for us was around a play policy. This is a parks play infrastructure policy, and how we develop development of our play equipment in parks. What we did was start looking at this just by a conversation we'd had with a finance officer and one of our parks officers, and it sort of led to a discussion that our council as a whole did not know how many play parks were across the whole of our borough. That included council facilities, those that were in parish or town councils. St Ledger Homes, our housing organisation, have a number of play parks, and then there are a number in community or private ownership. We thought we knew how many play parks we had under the council's management. With 175 at the time, they got 170 listed, so there were 5 that we found through this exercise. In total, we've got 256 play parks across Doncaster. That's not pieces of equipment, that's parks with equipment in it. Of that, we identified through quite technically, if you're not a parks person, there's laps, leaps and neeps, which is the density of population around a park. So one is around toddlers. Then you take, as you can see those rings in the slide there, you take your ring out. Then there's sort of primary school age children, and then there's teenagers, laps, leaps and neeps. So you base your park on the density of those people there and how many in the service. We have 44 parks in Doncaster that duplicate exactly the same population. So you've got a population size, you've got one park in their service and you've got another park in the same footprint service and nobody else. We've actually got one park service in a community where nobody lives in it under the age of 18. So you start, and there's no direct bus routes, it's out in a rural setting. So you start to look at this and think, well, why have we got a poor quality provision, but a large section of parks across the borough? So the policy has been designed to look at how we can actually refine our offer and also at the same time make sure it's quality and value. Now, quality and value assessment is the thing we've designed. So the easiest way I can explain that, when I was a young kid, we had a park, nice shiny play park, that was high quality. Next to it was your ditch, where all summer you rode up and down it on your bike with your bottle of pop, had your lunch there, and then you carried on in the afternoon. So the ditch was high value to us because we played in it, but of low quality, where the play park was high quality and we didn't play in it. So what we're looking at when we look at all our parks and play equipment now and replacement is matching that quality value assessment. And we've set an online process and a portal where you can go on there and then match against that demographic issues. You can look at education attainment, you can look at health indices, so you can start looking at which are the best parks to invest in if we have that duplication. We actually have 2 parks where we actually duplicate that 4 times in the same area. So we've got 4 parks servicing the same area. And that's where the play policy has come in. Where that's leading us to now is a discussion around using the quality value assessment with our 106 investments, and through that to our green space audit and planning are wanting to work with us to see how we can use quality value assessments across the whole planning process and looking at how that works. And that's sort of a step change in the organisation that we've enabled. That sort of, to me, is the systemic change that we get to through the other work. The other work helps our communities, but eventually if we can get the systemic change in the system, that will enable that to be sustainable and continually grow and develop as we move forward. Hopefully that's given you a bit of a snapshot of our Future Parks programme. I'll just stop sharing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy. That was so interesting. I was like scribbling down little bits of notes and yeah, I found especially interesting about the park benches and just how moving them, and yeah, it's not something you ever think of, but then now when you think about it, the benches often are always in very linear kind of lines. We've had a few questions in the chat come in whilst you were chatting. Louise actually firstly said, can you walk and cycle to the leisure centre by other entrances or just access by the new link road? I don't want to sort of speak on your behalf, Louise. I can't actually see where Louise is, but
yeah,
yeah. You said it, that's the question, yeah. You mentioned the new link road and closing off the previous entrance, but I wasn't sure if there were other ways.
No, the link road is between the centre. So imagine you have a leisure centre here. You have a parks entrance here, and between it is a 60-metre quarry. And we filled the quarry in, and we built a footpath and a link road between the two, and closed the entrance. So everybody has to go into the country park because it was underused. It forces people in there. It changes behaviours. The car parks have been completely readapted there. So there are parking spaces next to the leisure centre, but when they fill up those 15 spaces, you have to park 60 metres away. And it's all floodlit, it's all CCTV. So what you automatically do is build an active environment because you have no choice. And we've seen a massive uplift in the use of the leisure centre and seen a significant uplift in the park as well. What I forgot to mention is that leisure centre now is completely green. It runs off air source heat pumps. So it matches our green agenda as well.
Thank you. That's great. I don't know if Alex if you want to come in and ask a question about the Make Space for Girls.
Yeah, can do. It was just that lots of the things you're talking about, Andrew, were things that Susanna Walker talks about for Make Space for Girls, is making sure that teenagers can be seen, but also have privacy, making sure that benches aren't linear, that we create spaces around that. And just wondered whether that was work that had inspired you, or whether you'd actually looked at gender at all along this journey.
But both. It inspired us. We've heavily used that as our starting point on those discussions, but the discussions with the young people at the college, because the whole process has been, we've guided it, but it has been led by them to the point they sketched the designs, they chose the colours, we tested it, and then we've gone and actually had that bespoke built, and we're testing it on site. And actually it's tested in a way where we can actually lift it and move it to other areas to see if we move it around, does it work? So yeah, that piece of work is very much guided our thinking on this.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks for that question. Thank you, Alex. Matthew, do you want to ask your questions about disability inclusion? Again, I can't see Matthew.
Yeah, no, just something we've been discussing through our place expansion is how do we make sure everything, especially with green space, is disability friendly and not just the tokenistic roll the wheelchair onto one of those roundabout. Yep. It's actually from the point of contact, disability friendly. How have you made that with the policies and procedures so that it's the first point of call for Section 106 funding?
Yeah, so it's something that when we took this through, this policy, our politicians were very, very focused on. They want accessible sites. There's a couple of things we need to consider when we do this. Is we're going through a massive stock of play parks, 250 odd there. If I'm being honest, 2/3 of them in real poor quality state. So we have to think carefully about the accessibility, because we could put the accessible equipment in the play park, but one of the issues we have is some of these play parks don't even have footpaths to them. Even some of the more recent ones, they've built them, they've put the pads around them, but actually to get to them, you've got to go across a grass surface quite a distance. So we're looking at them on an individual basis. Our policy around this is we will have in our localities a number of large scale parks which will have a number of items for people that have got mobility issues or disabilities. And then what we'll do is segue that into other parks as we move through. So one of the things that we tend to do, as you said, is we'll put a wheelchair enabled roundabout in. The feedback when we speak to young people, both from those that are disabled and those that have aren't but are their brothers and sisters, is they want to play together. So just the simple inclusion of 2 basket swings next to each other, where if possible one of those people who've got mobility issues can actually either be lifted on or can get onto the swing, where their brother or sister can play, or their friends can play next to them exactly the same. So when you see them on them as you walk by, you wouldn't see any difference. So we're not ostracizing the person who's got disabilities or highlighting they've got disabilities. So I think there's a number of ways we need to do that. In an ideal world, we're able to do this across every park. In practice at the moment, that will take us a long time, but this policy has been designed specifically as a policy, not a strategy. The one thing I've learned doing this is, and I hadn't really thought about it, is you put a policy in place in a local authority, everybody has to adhere to it. You cannot adhere, you cannot make a decision because it's a policy. You put a strategy in place, because that's where we were going with this initially, and people can actually look at the strategy, but they don't actually have to deliver it. So we decided, and it's a lot harder route, but we've put the policy in. And my positioning is now, from a local authority point of view, everything we do in the future will be a policy. We'll have a strategy, but we'll make sure there's a policy there, because that forces our officers to actually think about it and do it. That does sound quite prescriptive approach. It isn't. what we do behind the scenes is work with those officers and those teams across the period of time we've had to come up with that common purpose I put in the chat and understand the principles and agree the policy before we implement it. So it's not done to, it's actually working with, it's the same principles we work with our communities, we work with our colleagues internally or within other organisations as well. Sorry, I hope that answers your question in a long way.
No, that was really good to hear, and it's definitely that bit about that policy rather than strategy when we're talking with the councils, and especially if we're looking to change the planning policy. So the existing ones we can work with, it's those new ones being put in and making sure the developers work with inclusion in their mind, not just budget, bottom lines, and working with potential new residents.
So the beauty of having the policy and having the portal system we have here in Doncaster now is what the planners are doing, even before they go and have those first discussions with developers when they start thinking about a site, is they run the system, and the system tells them what is the most likely need. So what we've got in Doncaster at the moment is we've got a large sum of money sat 106 that we're looking at how we're spending it. As you're probably aware, when you get the 106 monies or the SIL, the planning game monies, the number of houses triggers the money. Now, developers can take a long time to get to that point. So you may decide on a park and you need toddler play equipment now, but by the time the money's released, actually the people that are moving into there could be 10 years of age predominantly, the children. So the equipment you've agreed very specifically in the development plan with the developer initially is probably not the right equipment. What we do now is say we will make a decision at the trigger point using the play parks infrastructure policy of what the right equipment is or the right investment is in that community, because it takes in the whole of the wider footprint as well. So it doesn't constrain us to what we decide on day one. That's the beauty of it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that, Andrew, and thank you everyone for the questions. It was really interesting and insightful. I'm gonna I think Emma's gonna put us into breakout rooms now, just to give us an opportunity to kind of have a bit of a discussion about everything. I've posted a couple of questions just in the chat, hopefully. Just if you want to use those as a bit of a guide to think about and discuss. But yeah, Emma will put you into the breakout rooms, and please feel free to sort of discuss about your own place, or use those sort of prompts that we've posted in the chat, and then we'll return here afterwards. All right, thank you.
Ruth, have you not received an invitation to join a room? Let's see. I'll unassign you and then reassign you and see if that works. Alex? Hello? Hi. Are you okay?
Great, everybody. Yes, Amy.
Just going to say a Padlet to you. That's all.
Thank you. Good reminder.
I'm sure you're on it, but
I had just out the corner of my eye looked at my little reminder, but it's good to be reminded. Thank you. I think Emma, we're thinking that's kind of the last sort of thing to go.
Yeah.
I think we've got everybody back into the room now. We might have lost a few people. I think people probably having to dart off and bits and bobs, and it is lunchtime as well. So welcome back. I hope people had some great discussions. We had a really lovely discussion in our group and some really great reflections. There was a unanimous agreement that we wanted to go to Exeter to try and circumnavigate the that green sort of loop, which I probably won't have time for in my trip down there on Thursday, unfortunately. Whilst everybody's back, I think we're going to sort of round up, and in the final sort of moments, we'd like to provide a space for everyone who's attended today to just complete a Padlet survey, which is kind of helping us carry ideas forwards. Emma has posted that in the chat, and I think that as well, it's worth just reminding everybody that both James and Andy have been really open to sort of further discussions about what's gone on in their places and sort of offered visits and support. So that's really, really kind of great. Thank you so much for that. If people want to kind of just complete the Padlet survey now, I think we're going to close off after that. Emma and myself were just discussing the fact that this is the final seminar in the series, and although there are no more seminars, the recordings will all be uploaded onto the website, and there's the essence documents and the explainer documents, which also will provide further details about this, and we will also be sending a roundup email. I think that's right, isn't it, Emma? Just to kind of close things off with further information and kind of next steps about going forwards. So I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody. Please go on and click the Padlet and complete that now. That won't take too long. And unless there's anything else from Simon or Emma or Amy, I think we can probably say goodbye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining today.
thanks everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks,
Thanks
everybody.
for the presentation.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.